Пятый. Система измерения ракет-носителя включена на излучение 70-й.
Доклад 70-го принял, пятый. Пятый, температура космической головной части в норме, 50-й. Доказ 50 принял, пятый.
Пятый. Готов к заданию режима предпусковая подготовка 30-й.
Доклад 30 принял, 30-го. Задать режим предпусковая подготовка, пятый.
Есть задать режим предпусковая подготовка 30-й.
Внимание на стартовом комплексе. Объявляется готовность к пуску 1 час 30 минут, пятый. Готовность к пуску 1 час 30 минут принял, 10-й. Готовность к пуску 1 час 30 минут принял, 20-й.
Готовность к пуску 1 час 30 минут принял 30-й.
Готовность к пуску 1 час 30 минут принял, 40-й. Готовность к пуску 1 час 30 минут принял, 50-й.
Готовность к пуску 1 час 30 минут принял, 60-й.
Готовность к пуску 1 час 30 минут принял, 70-й.
Готовность к пуску 1 час 30 минут принял 80-й.
Принята готовность к пуску 1 час 30 минут, 5-й.
Data monitoring in progress. (16.3) Burlock 1. Okay, burn data correct. Quaternion data and burn time, everything matches. Okay, copy. We proceed, we continue leak checks for page 22. Okay. 16.3, I'm Burlock 2, ready to report the parameters. Stand by for a little bit. Okay, copy. The second TV camera is on. We can see Bavaka 1 and Bavaka 3. Stand by for final leak check, monitoring the results. Again, per page 22. The Burlock 2 pressure at 1749, or actually 17,550, 792 BO 831. SI temperature 21.9, BO temperature 20.7. First parameter is 4. SR pressure 792. Copy. Hatch leak checks is complete. Proceed with the suit leak check. I'm 16.3. Burlock 1, copy all. Proceeding with the suit leak checks. RPO1 open. The heart belt is on, done. Okay. Strap system is tightened. Monitoring ventilation. Ventilation confirmed. Okay. Ventilation confirmed. Straps are tightened.
Пятый. Есть запуск автоматического цикла предпусковой подготовки. 30-й.
Загон 30-го принял, 5-й.
Gloves are on. Copy. Checking RDS cover. 0.4. 0.4. Closing the visors. Monitoring ventilation. Copy. Ventilation confirmed. Closing the spur. Closed. Closed. Preliminary pressurization is confirmed. Opening the valve and readings go. 3, 2, 1. Opening. Copy. Positive pressure 0.1, 0.35. Unintelligible. 0.1. Couldn't copy you clearly. In 3 seconds. Point 2. Copy. Point 3. Zero point 35. 0.35, copy. Did you open the visors? Open. Visors are open. Close upper copper. Copy. Yeah, 0.31. Is it 0.31? Yes, correct, 0.31. Section 3, Burlock 1. Suit leak checks are complete. Suits airtight. Helmets open. Time 2.1. 33 seconds for flight engineer. Commander 31 seconds. FE2 30 seconds. Time of fill 130, 131, and 132 in the same sequence. About after leak check, SR pressure 816, PPO2 197, oxygen bottle 1 211, second 211, third 224. How copy? Copy all. Wrote it down. All okay?
And you made sure the position of the Bevaka switch. Yes, we see Bevaka. Copy.
Пятый, готов включить систему 1 с Г-355, 50-й.
Доклад 50-го принял, 50-му. Включить систему 1 с Г-355, 5-й.
Есть включить систему 1 с Г-355, 50-й. Пятый, заключительные операции на площадках кабины обслуживания проведены. Замечаний нет. Готов опустить площадки кабины обслуживания. 10-й.
Доклад 10-го принял, 10-му. Опустить площадки кабины обслуживания, 5-й.
Есть опустить площадки кабины обслуживания. 10-й.
At 18:00:53, PPO CO2 is 1.1. Copy. Hey, what's 0.74? Right now it's 1.4.
Г-355 включена. Замечаний нет. 50-й.
Доклад 50-го принял, 5-й.
Royalty upon your readiness, you can turn on we can turn the music on when you're ready. Yes, Royalty, you're ready to listen to music.
Пятый. Проверка басов завершена, замечаний нет, 30-й.
Доклад 30-го принял, 5-й.
Пятый, готов отключить систему 8Г-332, разобрать схему термостатической космической головной части 50-й.
Доклад 50 принял. 50-му выключить систему 8Г-332, разобрать схему термостатированной космической головной части 5-й.
Есть отключить систему 8Г-332, разобрать схему термостатической космической головной части 50-й.
Пятый, система измерения ракет-носителя обесточена, 70-й.
Доклад 70 принял. 5-й.
Пятый, площадки кабины обслуживания опущены, 10-й.
Доклад 10 принял. 5-й.
view. We see Bulwark 1, Bulwark 2 on video camera.
Good morning. You are seeing a live view of Launch Pad 6, Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where a Soyuz 2.1A booster stands fully fueled, ready for launch to send an American astronaut and 2 Roscosmos cosmonauts into orbit on a quick 2-orbit journey to reach the International Space Station.
1 hour
This
prior to
is
launch.
Mission Control Houston,
Bulwark 1
live from the
will
International
call
Space
you,
Station Flight
and
Control Room
everything
here at the
is
Johnson
in
Space Center
order
in
on board.
Houston, Texas, as countdown clocks are ticking backward for the launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop its Soyuz booster at 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. Earlier today, the Soyuz booster was fueled for launch by engineers in Baikonur, a process that was completed just a few hours ago. The launch control team in Baikonur reports that all systems are go for launch with no issues being worked as the countdown enters its final phase. Here in Mission Control Houston, the team is monitoring the Expedition 71 crew and space station systems on the International Space Station and is preparing to support the arrival of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft later today. The station population will increase temporarily from 9 to 12 people with the addition of NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates, Soyuz commander Alexei Ovchinin and flight engineer Ivan Wagner. The crew is all set to begin a flight of just over 3 hours in duration to the International Space Station, with docking scheduled for 2:33 p.m. Central Time, 3:33 p.m. Eastern Time later today, to the Rosviet module of the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. Once the hatches are open between the newly arrived Soyuz and the International Space Station, Pettit, Ovchinin, and Wagner will be greeted by Station Commander Oleg Kononenko and his crewmates Roscosmos cosmonauts Nikolai Chub and Alexander Grabenkin, along with NASA astronauts Tracy Dyson, Matt Dominic, Michael Barrett, Jeanette Epps, Sonny Williams, and Butch Wilmore. Kononenko, Chub, and Dyson will depart in the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft on September 23rd, heading for a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. Dyson will have spent 6 months in space on this, her third flight into space, while Kononenko and Chub will come home after completing a full year on orbit. Pettit will remain on board the space station through March of next year, returning home at that time with Ovchinin and Wagner on Soyuz MS-26. Kononenko, who is the chief of the Cosmonaut Corps, has already spent more days in space than any other human and recently passed 1,000 days in space on June 4th on this, his 5th spaceflight. At the time of landing, Kononenko and Chub will have spent 374 days in space, and for Kononenko, a total of 1,111 days in space. Pettit's launch today mirrors that of Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov, who is scheduled to launch to the International Space Station as part of the SpaceX Crew 9 Dragon later this month. This is providing a reciprocal crew exchange capability to maintain safe and continuous space station operations. Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers is currently on deck. They completed a handover period just a few hours ago, and the team here in Houston is being led by Flight Director Judd Freeling, who you can see in the middle of your screen, and to his right is Capcom or Capsule Communicator Luca Parmentano. The Capcom is responsible for communicating with the crew aboard the International Space Station and serves as the voice link between teams on the ground and the station crew. Freeling, Parmentano, and the rest of the flight control team are currently monitoring the systems on the International Space Station, which will be the final destination for the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft later today.
Yes, I fixed it. Copy.
The team in Mission Control Houston are also working with the team in Mission Control Moscow. You are now seeing a view from the balcony of the Russian Mission Control Center in Kuryov, just outside of Moscow. Launch through spacecraft separation is controlled at the blockhouse in Baikonur, but at the time of spacecraft separation, the flight control will be transferred to the team at this Russian Mission Control Center. We are now just over an hour and 3 minutes from the launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. Again, you are seeing a live view of the Soyuz MS-26 on the launch pad in Baikonur.
Very well.
Liftoff today again is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time, and 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur in the Central Asian Desert. The countdown continues to proceed on schedule with no issues being reported from the engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur. Coming up in just over 30 minutes, about 32 minutes from now, we will also have a go, no-go poll for launch. Atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster, strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz, are NASA's Don Pettit, Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner. You can see them there in that photo on your screen. Ovchinin is serving as the Soyuz commander and is in the center seat of the descent module, and he will be flanked to his left by Ivan Wagner, who is serving as Board Engineer 1, and then to Ovchinin's right will be Don Pettit, who is serving as Board Engineer 2. Just a short while ago, the crew was in the descent module and they completed the suit leak checks. And this will be Wagner's second flight into space, Pettit's fourth, having already accrued 370 days in space, and also Ovchinin's fourth flight into space, having accrued 375 days of previous spaceflight experience. For now, the countdown is now at about 1 hour and 1 minute away from launch and ticking back for the launch of the Soyuz MS-26 crew to the International Space Station. Again, that launch is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time, and 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. Don Pettit's launch today is his fourth visit to the International Space Station. He first flew as part of the Expedition 6 crew, which launched on STS-113, the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and then returned to Earth on Soyuz TMA-1 in 2003. And now you are seeing a live view inside the Soyuz capsule. Again, inside the capsule we have NASA's Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner. Ovchinin is in the center seat, and then to his left is Ivan Wagner, and to his right is NASA's Don Pettit. Again, today's launch marks the fourth spaceflight for NASA astronaut Don Pettit. He first flew to the International Space Station as part of the Expedition 6 crew, which launched on STS-113, the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and then he returned to Earth on a Soyuz TMA-1 in 2003. His next venture into space was part of the STS-126 mission of the Space Shuttle Endeavour in 2008, and then he returned for a third visit to the space station aboard Soyuz TMA-03M in 2012 and was part of Expeditions 30 and 31. With everything proceeding in good shape towards launch, and now just under an hour, about 59 minutes away from launch, let's go ahead and take a moment to learn more about NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his road to becoming an astronaut.
Roac Key 16-3. Go ahead, this is Roac 1. Prepare to record the parameters. Copy, we're ready. Copy, ready.
If you're just joining us, you are again looking at a live view of the Soyuz MS-26 on the launch pad at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the Central Asian Desert, where we are just under 52 minutes away from launch. The launch will send NASA astronaut Don Pettit, as well as Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner, to the International Space Station. Liftoff today is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. The countdown continues to proceed on schedule, with no issues being reported from the launch engineers in Baikonur. Coming up in just over 20 minutes, we will also have a go, no-go poll for today's launch. And then coming up in the countdown around 10:43 a.m. Central, the Soyuz will go to autonomous power and it will take it off the ground power. And then shortly after that, we will see the gantry arms that are currently surrounding the spacecraft on the launch pad being lowered. There will still be 2 service umbilicals attached to the side of the Soyuz booster, and we will see the retraction of the first umbilical around the T-minus 35-second mark, and then the second umbilical will retract around the T-minus 15-second mark, which will initiate engine sequence start. The crew flew to the Baikonur Cosmodrome from their training base at Star City, Russia on August 26th for final pre-launch training and inspections of their Soyuz spacecraft. With the crew in Baikonur completing their training template, the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft was encapsulated into the upper stage of the Soyuz booster in the integration building last week. After the 3 stages of the Soyuz 2.1A booster were mated together, the Soyuz rocket began its trek to the launch pad shortly after sunrise on Sunday, and then it was hauled to the pad horizontally on a rail car in a process that took about 30 minutes to complete. Once at the pad, the Soyuz was raised hydraulically to its vertical position for final pre-launch preparations, where it stands today. Again, you are seeing a live view of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop at the launch pad at Site 31 in the Baikonur Cosmodrome. We are just under 50 minutes, about 49 minutes away from launch of the Soyuz. As we continue to watch the countdown clocks ticking backwards for today's launch of the next crew to the International Space Station, just under 49 minutes from now. Out on the launch pad at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the Soyuz booster is poised for launch, fully fueled with kerosene and liquid oxygen as the propellant, and the Soyuz 2.1A is the vehicle for crews that launch to the International Space Station from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at this Soyuz booster.
53. Put shoulder straps on. Sixteen 23. Shoulder straps tightened. Copy. Shoulder straps tightened.
And now we're back on a live view of the Soyuz 2.1A booster standing at the launch pad at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the Central Asian desert. We are just over 47 minutes away from launch and ticking backwards. Today's launch is again scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur to send NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner to the International Space Station. Atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster and strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz, the center section of the three-section Soyuz capsule, are NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner. The three sections of the Soyuz spacecraft are familiar to those who have watched previous missions to the International Space Station.
Service tower closeout activities are complete. Ready to retract service towers to horizontal position. Copy all. Ready to activate a launch vehicle measurement system in radiation mode. Copy. Activate measurement system in radiation mode. Measurement system is activated in radiation mode. Copy all. Retract service towers to horizontal
Again, you are
position.
seeing a live view of The Soyuz booster with its Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop at the launch pad at Site 31 in Kazakhstan. We are now about 44 minutes away from today's launch. Again, today's launch is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time, and 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. The final moments of the launch countdown will include several important milestones. At about T-7 minutes, the pre-launch operations will be complete, and at this point in the countdown, the Soyuz booster will be ready for launch. About a minute later, at T-6 minutes, the physical launch key will be inserted into the launch bunker to transition the launch sequence into automatic mode. About 30 seconds later, at T-5.5 minutes, launch control will report that the range in Baikonur is clear and that the Soyuz rocket is ready to begin its journey. About 30 seconds after that, at T-5 minutes, the onboard systems of the Soyuz will be switched to onboard control, and the commander's cockpit displays and controls will be activated, and the crew will close their helmets. And you're now seeing retraction of the gantry arms. So those gantry arms surrounding the spacecraft are currently being lowered, and the two service umbilicals will remain attached to the side of the Soyuz booster until we get to the final seconds of the launch countdown. The first umbilical will retract around the T-35 second mark, followed by the second umbilical shortly thereafter, retracting around the T-15 second mark. So again, as we start to proceed into the final moments of the launch countdown, currently under 42 minutes away from launch, we'll continue walking you through what some of those final milestones will be. So around the T-4 minute mark, the fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engine will be purged with nitrogen, which will fireproof them. And about a minute and 15 seconds later, at T-2 minutes 45 seconds, the booster's fuel tanks will be pressurized for flight. And then at T-1.5 minutes, the ground propellant feed will be terminated to the Soyuz booster. Followed shortly thereafter, the Soyuz will be switched to internal power, and then we'll be in the final minute of the launch countdown. Again, we will see the first umbilical tower separate from the booster at T-35 seconds, and that is when we will also have auto sequence start. Shortly after that, the ground umbilical to the third stage will be disconnected, and then we will see the second umbilical tower separate, which will initiate engine sequence start, and then the launch command will be issued, and we will be in the final seconds of the launch countdown before seeing that liftoff today at 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. At the time of the Soyuz launch today, the International Space Station will be flying 260 miles over southwest Kazakhstan, and the International Space Station will be 284 miles behind Soyuz and will pass directly over the launch site 20 seconds after launch, leapfrogging past the Soyuz.
Copy. Is armed. Copy.
And now on your screen, you can see that the gantry arms that were surrounding the Soyuz have been completely lowered as we continue to proceed in the launch countdown. We're now just under 40 minutes away from today's launch. In just under 10 minutes, we will see the go, no-go poll for launch taking place. After today's liftoff, we will go through several different milestones, and then about 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, the third stage engine of the Soyuz booster will shut down and the Soyuz will separate from its launch vehicle in its preliminary orbit, deploying its solar arrays and navigational antennas. At that point, the 3 Soyuz crew members will trail the space station by 1,176 miles, and the chase will begin, resulting in docking to the Rossviet module on the Earth-facing side of the station's Russian segment at 2:33 p.m. Central Time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time later today. At the predicted time of docking, Soyuz and the International Space Station will be flying 260 miles over southeast Russia, northeast of the town of Belgorod.
RPN on input 2, and also until command.
At the launch site on the steppe of Kazakhstan, NASA officials are on hand to watch the beginning of the journey for NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos cosmonaut crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner. Leading the NASA delegation on hand for today's launch is NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations, Ken Bowersox, Johnson Space Center Deputy Director Steve Kerner, Johnson Space Center Director of Flight Operations Norm Knight, International Space Station Deputy Program Manager Dina Quintella, and NASA's Chief Astronaut Joe Acaba. Additionally, with them, they have NASA's Public Affairs Officer Courtney Beasley, who filed this audio report a short time ago.
Thanks, Anna, and hello from the launch viewing site at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. I am coming to you from about 2 miles from Launch Pad 31, where we see the spacecraft and rocket poised for launch this evening. It's a comfortable night here at the viewing site weather-wise, with temperatures around 68 degrees and slight winds. It's been a busy several days for our team here, starting with our arrival into Kazakhstan Saturday afternoon. We had a chilly and rainy rollout of the Soyuz MS-26 early Sunday morning, starting at 7:30 a.m. There was some slight rain off and on, with temperatures around 45 degrees Fahrenheit. The rocket was lifted upright and positioned for launch, where it stands now, ready to send Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner to the International Space Station. As most people know, Pettit is very passionate about photography. At the press conference here in Baikonur yesterday, Pettit stated that his photography specialty is taking pictures of Earth and the stars at nighttime. He said that on this mission, they have 3 new lenses optimized for nighttime photography, so that's something he's really looking forward to trying out once he's on board. When he was asked what else he's most looking forward to spending his free time doing aboard the station, he said he's most looking forward to doing only the things he can do in space that he can't replicate down here on Earth. We also got a little insight into the zero-G indicator for this mission from Ovchinin. He explained that the crew is flying a stuffed animal corgi dog to the station with them. Ovchinin said his family has a corgi, and he talked with the crew, and they decided to have the stuffed animal accompany them on their mission. He mentioned the corgi will remain on board with them throughout the mission, and it will remind him of his family. For now, though, Anna, we are standing by at the viewing site, ready for launch. Don has a group of family, friends, and our NASA colleagues here at the viewing site ready to cheer the crew on for launch today. We'll send it back to you and the teams in Houston as you count down to the final moments before liftoff.
And thank you, Courtney. We are now approaching about 35 minutes away from launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. Again, liftoff today is scheduled for 11:25 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 a.m. Eastern Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur to send NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates, Soyuz commander Alexei Ovchinin and flight engineer Ivan Wagner on a 2-orbit journey to the International Space Station, where they will then join the Expedition 71 crew. Following liftoff in just about 35 minutes from now, the spacecraft will see several milestones. At about 1 minute and 54 seconds after launch, the escape tower will be jettisoned. A few seconds after that, the 4 strap-on boosters will be jettisoned. After they complete their job, they will drop away at an altitude of 28 statute miles. About 30 seconds after that, at launch plus 2 minutes and 37 seconds, the launch shroud will be jettisoned as the Soyuz rocket is flying at an altitude of 48 miles. And then about 4 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, the third stage will ignite. The third stage ignites while the second stage is still burning, which is why the Soyuz has an open area in between the second and third stages. A few seconds after that, the core booster will separate and the Soyuz will then be propelled by the single engine of the Soyuz third stage. And then at about 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, we will have third stage cutoff and separation. The spacecraft will then begin automatically executing pre-programmed commands to deploy the antennas and solar arrays. After the Soyuz makes it onto orbit, control of the spacecraft from here on out will then be overseen by the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow and Koryov. Soyuz will then begin its short to-orbit chase to reach the International Space Station today, and we will see rendezvous and docking scheduled for 2:33 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Eastern later today.
16.3. Selection of any formats is enabled. Copy. This is 16.3. After leak checks of the suits, the pressure remains at 816, just as it been at that moment. Copy.
And we are now about 32.5 minutes away from today's launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop its Soyuz 2.1A booster in the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. And we will see a launch go-no-go poll in just about 2 minutes from now. Today's launch and docking of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft will set the International Space Station up for a busy sequence of upcoming crew rotations. In just a couple of weeks, we will see the departure of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft that is scheduled for September 23rd, and this will bring NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson and her Roscosmos crewmates Nikolai Chub and Alexander Gurbenkin back to Earth with a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. The departure of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft will also mark the start of Expedition 72. Shortly after that landing, we will also have the launch of NASA's SpaceX Crew 9 mission, carrying NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov to the International Space Station. Crew 9 will then have a brief handover period with Crew 8 before Crew 8 returns back to Earth, carrying NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Michael Barrett, and Jeanette Epps, along with Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbenkin. And we are now just over 31 minutes away from today's launch. Everything continuing to proceed as planned, and no issues currently being reported at the blockhouse in Baikonur. NASA astronaut Don Pettit, who is launching aboard the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft in just a short while from now, has been a part of NASA's astronaut corps since he was selected in 1996. And prior to becoming an astronaut, he worked as a staff scientist at the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. He is a veteran of 3 space flights and previously served as the science officer for Expedition 6 in 2003 and operated the robotic arm for STS-126 in 2008 and served as a flight engineer for Expeditions 30 and 31 in 2012, where he lived aboard the International Space Station for more than a year. And there on your screen, you can see photos of today's crew launching aboard the Soyuz MS-26. And now you are seeing a live view into the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, where NASA astronaut Don Pettit is strapped in awaiting launch along with his Roscosmos crewmates. Alexei Ovchinin, and Ivan Wagner. We are now just under 30 minutes away from today's launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. That launch is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. This view that you're seeing of the Soyuz crew, they are currently atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster and are strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz. Again, in the Soyuz and launching today are NASA's Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner. Ovchinin is the Soyuz commander, and he is in the center seat of the descent module, and flanked to his left is Ivan Wagner, who is serving as board engineer 1, and to Ovchinin's right is Don Pettit, who is serving as board engineer 2. We are just over 28 minutes away from launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. Everything continuing to proceed as planned, and you are seeing a live view of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft aboard at the launch site in Baikonur. Launch day for the 3 crew members began several hours ago as they were awakened at their cosmonaut hotel crew quarters to begin their final pre-launch activities. We are going to go ahead and take a look at what they've been up to this morning in preparation for today's launch. You can see the crew members as they were exiting their cosmonaut hotel crew quarters to begin their final pre-launch activities. The crew then boarded a bus to depart the cosmonaut hotel and took an about 40-minute ride to the integration and suit-up facility at building 254 inside the Baikonur Cosmodrome. And before they departed the cosmonaut hotel, the first order of business was to sign their names on the doors in the rooms where they spent the past 2 weeks. And they departed on that bus to some traditional farewell music and were on their journey to the launch pad. After arriving at the integration building, each crew member underwent final medical exams and suited up in their so-called launch and entry suits. One by one, each of the crew members moved to a mock-up of a Soyuz spacecraft seat to allow technicians to conduct pressure checks, ensuring that their suits were free of any leaks. And there you can see as NASA astronaut Don Pettit moved into the mock-up of the Soyuz spacecraft seat to allow technicians to conduct pressure checks. Again, this video was captured earlier today as they underwent their pre-launch preparations. And during this process, family members and invited guests looked on across a protective pane of glass to maintain quarantine, and this suit-up procedure was completed a little over 5 hours prior to today's launch. And there you can see as the crew completed their suit pressure checks, they went to exchange some final remarks with senior NASA and Roscosmos managers. After some final farewells with their family, the crew then exchanged some final remarks with senior NASA and Roscosmos officials. And there we saw NASA's Ken Bowersox and Dina Cantella exchange some final words with Don Pettit. The crew members then left the Site 254 integration building. As they left the Site 254 integration building, Ovchinin, the Soyuz commander, reported that he and his crewmates were ready to proceed to the launch pad. The trio then boarded their bus at about 7:42 a.m. Central Time, 5:42 p.m. in Baikonur for the ride to the launch site 31, and that trip took almost 1 hour to complete at the desolate launch site. After arriving at the launch pad, the crew departed their bus and then climbed a few stairs and waved goodbye to well-wishers before entering the elevator for the ride to the top of the Soyuz rocket to board their spacecraft, the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, which they have now been aboard for about the past 2 hours. And you can see NASA astronaut Don Pettit there at the bottom of the stairs. After waving goodbye to some well-wishers, they then entered the elevator for their ride to the top of the Soyuz rocket, where they then boarded their spacecraft, the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, which they have now been aboard for about 2 hours. And there you now see a live view of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop. And we are about 13 minutes away from today's launch. Today's launch will send NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner into a short 2-orbit journey to reach the International Space Station. Docking today is scheduled for 2:33 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster and strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz are NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner. As mentioned earlier, Ovchinin, as Soyuz commander, is in the center seat of the Soyuz MS-26 with Pettit to his right and Wagner to his left. We are now just under 12 minutes away from launch, about 11 minutes and 40 seconds. In the final moments of the launch countdown, we will see several milestones beginning at about T-minus 7 minutes when pre-launch operations will be complete. And at this point in the countdown, the Soyuz booster will be ready for launch. About a minute later, at T-minus 6 minutes, the physical launch key will be inserted into the launch bunker to transition the launch sequence into automatic mode. Followed about 30 seconds later, the launch control will report that the range in Baikonur is clear and that the Soyuz is ready to begin its journey. About 30 seconds after that, at T-minus 5 minutes, the onboard systems will be switched to onboard control, and the commander's cockpit displays and controls will be activated, and the crew will go ahead and close their helmets. At T-minus 4 minutes, the fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engines will be purged with nitrogen to fireproof them. And then about a minute later, the booster's fuel tanks will be pressurized for flight. And then once we are at T-minus 1.5 minutes, the ground propellant feed will be terminated to the Soyuz booster. 30 seconds after that, the Soyuz will be switched to internal power, and we will be in the final minute of the launch countdown. At T-minus 35 seconds, the first umbilical tower will be separated from the booster, and we will then have auto-sequence start.
Copy 5-minute launch readiness. Copy 5-minute launch readiness.
Ready for lock 1, monitored it. We checked
Copy
it.
all.
Is ready. Copy.
A few seconds after that auto-sequence start, the ground umbilical to the third stage will be disconnected.
5-minute readiness. Close your pressurized helmets.
And about 15 seconds after that, the second umbilical tower will separate, which will initiate engine sequence start. And then at T-minus 12 seconds, the launch command will be issued, and we will be in the final seconds of the launch countdown before seeing liftoff at 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time.
We see you on camera 2, Burwalk 1, Burwalk 3. 16-3, this is Burwalk 1. I have my pressurized helmet closed, copy, and PSS is ready, yes.
We are now just under 8.5 minutes away from today's launch of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop, carrying NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner to the International Space Station. And there on your screen, you are seeing an inside view of the Soyuz MS-26 crew. Again, that is NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner. We are about 7 minutes and 45 seconds away from today's launch. In just about 30 seconds from now, at T-minus 7 minutes, the pre-launch operations will officially be complete, and at this point in the countdown, the Soyuz booster will be ready for launch.
16-3, 1 minute written, everything is proceeding per the schedule. Control is on board, and we will be broadcasting the launch.
And telemetry will be received from the rocket.
Everything is in order on board. We're ready for launch.
Доклад 70-го принял, первый.
We see Burwalk 1 and Burwalk 2 on video camera 1.
And you are hearing some conversations between the crew currently strapped inside that Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, reporting that they are ready for launch. And we are at just under 6.5 minutes away from today's launch. Again, we had that readiness confirmed about 30 seconds ago at T-minus 7 minutes, and those pre-launch operations are now complete. The Soyuz booster is now ready for launch, and telemetry has been received from the rocket, indicating that all primary and backup systems are set to support today's liftoff. Launch today is precisely timed for the moment where the Earth's rotation will place the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the plane or corridor of the orbit of the space station, which is inclined at 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. And we just heard confirmation that the launch key has been inserted at the launch bunker. It is a real key, a physical key, that transitions the launch sequence into automatic mode. In just a few seconds, launch control should report that the range at Baikonur is clear and that the Soyuz rocket will be ready to begin its journey. We are just under 5.5 minutes away from today's launch. We are about 5 minutes and 5 seconds away from today's launch. In just a few seconds, the onboard systems will be switched to onboard control, and the commander's cockpit displays and controls will be activated. And then the crew members will begin to close their helmets, which puts them on suit oxygen. And we just heard confirmation that the fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engines are being purged with nitrogen to fireproof them by removing vapors of fuel and oxidizer. And you are now seeing a live look of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop at the launch pad in Baikonur. And we are now at 4 minutes and 15 seconds away from today's launch of the Soyuz. Today's launch, again, is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. Coming up in about a minute, the booster's fuel tanks will be pressurized for flight, and this optimizes the flow of fuel and helps to add structural support to the rocket. We are now about 3 minutes and 45 seconds away from today's launch. Everything continuing to proceed as planned with no issues being reported from the blockhouse in Baikonur. We are now just over 3 minutes and 15 seconds away from today's launch. In less than 30 seconds, we will see that milestone where the booster's fuel tanks will be pressurized for flight, completely pressurized, and this helps to optimize the flow of fuel and again add some of that structural support to the rocket. After that, at about T-minus.
We have oxidizer and fuel drain and safety valves of launch vehicle closed. Block 1, copy. All, everything is fine on board. The crew members are feeling well. Copy.
And you just heard some words there between the crew in Soyuz, confirming that all 3 crew members are feeling well and prepared for today's launch. And we are just over 2.5 minutes from today's launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft carrying NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner.
Booster propellant tank pressurization.
And we just heard confirmation that the booster's fuel tanks are being pressurized for flight. We are about 2 minutes and 5 seconds away from today's launch. In just about 30 seconds from now, the ground propellant feed will be terminated. And then shortly after that, the Soyuz will be switched to internal power. We are just under 1 minute and 45 seconds away from today's launch. Just under 1.5 minutes to go until the launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. We are at less than 1 minute and 10 seconds away from today's launch. The Soyuz will be switched to internal power shortly. And then about 30 seconds after that, the first umbilical tower will separate and we will have auto sequence start, and then the ground umbilical to the 3rd stage will be disconnected, followed by the second umbilical tower separating with the launch command being issued. We are at 45 seconds away from today's launch and counting.
We have vehicle to internal power.
Есть переход блока 3-й ступени на бортовое питание. Есть отрыв второго блока 3-й ступени.
The first umbilical tower is now separating, and the Soyuz is on internal power. We have 20 seconds until launch and counting.
We have auto sequence initiated. On board power.
We now have engine sequence start. The second umbilical tower is now separating.
Umbilical tower is separated.
Engines are at maximum thrust. Booster ignition at full throttle, and we have liftoff of Pettit, Ovchinin, and Wagner, now on their way to the International Space Station as part of a 2-orbit journey. We are seeing good vehicle parameters so far.
Phenomenal on board. When everything is fine on board. Copy.
Параметры конструкции ракеты-носителя в норме.
Vehicle performance is continuing to look good.
40 seconds. Everything is stable. Block 1, everything is stable on board. Remember, doing well. Copy.
We are now just over a minute into today's launch.
Yaw, pitch, and roll are nominal.
We are seeing good yaw, pitch, and roll, heading downrange.
Fine, and for the crew members are doing well. Copy.
We are just about a minute and 20 seconds into today's flight. The velocity is over 1,100 miles per hour. Everything continuing to proceed as planned. Just a few seconds, the escape tower will be jettisoned.
90 seconds. Thrusters are operating normally.
Параметры конструкции ракеты-носителя в норме.
Crew members are feeling well. Copy.
110. Тангаж, рысканье, вращение в норме.
We are about a minute and 55 seconds into today's launch. In just a few seconds, and we now see first stage separation.
We have DSF and sideline thruster off. Photo 1, copy all. Everything is fine on board. Copy.
The crew members reported they are feeling well, and we are having good pitch, roll, and yaw of the vehicle. All parameters on the vehicle are normal. We are now about 2 minutes and 37 seconds into today's flight. The launch shroud will be jettisoned shortly.
We have the control distance of the nose bearing. We copy out of 5 display control distance of the nose bearing.
We are now seeing a live view from the Soyuz rocket. The vehicle is stable. The Soyuz is currently traveling at a speed of about 4,700 miles an hour.
The parameters of the rocket booster structural parameters are nominal. Copy you. Everything is fine on board. Crew members are doing well. Copy.
We are about 3 minutes and 20 seconds into today's flight. About 5 minutes left until we reach orbital insertion.
200 seconds.
And we heard confirmation that the second stage thruster continues to perform well.
Copy you. Burlock 1 reporting everything is fine on board and crew members are feeling well. Copy.
The vehicle control system performance continues to be good. We are about 3 minutes and 50 seconds into today's flight. In about a minute, we will see the third stage begin to ignite while the second stage begins to shut down. We have about 30 seconds left of second stage performance.
250 seconds. Yaw, pitch, roll are nominal. Burlock 1 speaking everything is fine on board. Crew members are doing well. Copy.
Параметры системы управления ракеты-носителя в норме. 280. Прошел гарантийный надув.
We are 4 minutes and 45 seconds into today's flight. We have about 4 minutes of powered flight remaining.
290. Есть запуск двигателя третьей ступени. Есть выключение двигателя второй
Stage
ступени.
3 thrusters on.
Второй ступени.
290 seconds.
And we just saw a second stage separation, and the third stage has ignited.
That's Burlock 1. Everything's okay on board.
The Soyuz is now being propelled by the single engine of the Soyuz third stage.
310.
This engine is providing 67,000 pounds of thrust and will burn for about 4 minutes.
Everything's fine on board. Reporting Burlock 1. Copy.
We continue to see good structural parameters on the Soyuz vehicle, and the thrust on the third stage is performing well. We are about 5 minutes and 45 seconds into today's flight. We have about 3 minutes of powered flight remaining.
350. Полет нормальный.
350 seconds, flight nominal. Burlock 1, copy you. All okay on board, the crew feels great. Standing by for 1932.
We continue to see good roll, pitch, and yaw program on the Soyuz spacecraft. And the vehicle structural parameters are still performing well and look good. We are about 6 minutes and 25 seconds into today's flight.
Stage 3 thrusters are nominal. Burlock 1, copy. All okay on board? Copy.
We have about 2 minutes of powered flight left.
Полет нормальный.
410 seconds, flight nominal. Burlock 1, copy. All okay on board? Copy.
Рысканье, вращение в норме.
And we are 7 minutes and 10 seconds into today's flight. Everything continuing to proceed as planned. Everything looking good for the ride to orbit for NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner.
440 seconds. Vehicle is stable.
We are now 7 minutes and 30 seconds into today's flight. The vehicle remains stable. The velocity of the vehicle is now almost 13,500 miles an hour.
460 seconds. Launch vehicle parameters are nominal. Copy. Burlock 1, all okay on board. Copy.
We have less than a minute of powered flight remaining, and once the third stage delivers the Soyuz to orbit and the module is separated, a series of pre-programmed commands will be executed to prepare the Soyuz for orbital operations. These stored commands, called time-tagged commands, allow many of the Soyuz's systems to be automatically activated by onboard computers at precise time stored in those communicators.
490 seconds. Vehicle stabilization is nominal.
We are now 8.5 minutes into today's flight and about 15 seconds away from third stage cutoff and separation. Roll, pitch, and yaw parameters continuing to be normal.
590 seconds waiting for the separation.
And we now have confirmation of third stage separation. The single liquid-fueled engine has shut down and has dropped away at an altitude of about 126 miles. We are now standing by for solar array deployment. And we have confirmation that the solar arrays and antennas have been deployed. And control of the spacecraft from here on out will be overseen by the Russian Mission Control Center in Kuryov, outside of Moscow.
Correct. 35, close RPV 1 and 2. RPV 1 and 2 are closed. Copy. Standing by for the compartment monitor AKG. 1932-39, pressure NSR 803, inbound 831, and instrumentation compartment 836. Copy all. Next measurements in 5 minutes. Standing by for your steps on page 32. Please monitor RDR command execution and monitor number 1. Burlock 1, copy all.
Following a liftoff at 11:23 and 12 seconds a.m. Central Time, 9:23 and 12 seconds p.m. in Baikonur, and a 8-minute and 45-second ride to orbit, NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner are safely in orbit to begin their 2-orbit journey.
Yes, correct.
With the trio now in orbit, there is a record of 19 people currently in orbit in space.
Are you ready to receive the data from 1926? Yes, we're ready. 17. 17 decimal 25, 18, 16 decimal 8, 19, 268, 20, 1 decimal 0, 21st, 1 decimal 8, 22, 341, 23rd, 339, 24th, 18 decimal 0, 25th, 17 decimal 8, 26, 267, fuel 88.
You are now seeing a view of the internal Soyuz control panel. This is what the Soyuz crew is currently seeing on board. Again, that Soyuz crew is comprised of NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner.
The long test of course 1 is complete.
The Soyuz crew, being carried inside that Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, have now begun their short 2-orbit chase to reach the International Space Station. Again, docking today is scheduled for 2:33 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So following a launch today at 11:23 and 12 seconds a.m. Central Time, 9:23 and 12 seconds p.m. in Baikonur, the vehicle saw good roll, pitch, and yaw parameters as it began heading downrange. We saw good performance from all 3 stages.
Current LOS 1943.
And at about 8 minutes and 45 seconds into today's flight, we saw that 3rd stage cutoff and separation. And then the Soyuz capsule at that point and the crew inside were safely in orbit, and the spacecraft began automatically executing its pre-programmed commands to deploy the solar arrays and antennas. And we have received confirmation that that deployment was successful, and then control of the spacecraft is now being overseen by the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov outside of Moscow, and you're seeing a live view of that mission control from the balcony.
Course 1 string test is complete, no issues. Copy. We're also waiting for 5-minute AKG measurement.
Liftoff of a Soyuz 2.1A booster carrying the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft with NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner occurred aboard on time at 11:23 and 12 seconds a.m. Central Time, 12:23 and 12 seconds p.m. Eastern Time, and 9:23 and 12 seconds p.m. in Baikonur from Launch Pad 6, Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. All 3 stages operated as expected during an 8-minute and 45-second ride to place Soyuz in its preliminary orbit where it is now. The Soyuz spacecraft will now begin a short 2-orbit chase to arrive at its final destination, the International Space Station. Docking today is scheduled for 2:33 p.m. Central Time, 3:33 p.m. Eastern Time, with live NASA coverage beginning at 1:30 p.m. Central Time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We will follow that up with live coverage of hatch opening and welcoming remarks beginning at 4:30 p.m. Central Time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, this is Mission Control Houston.
5 minutes.
I know a lot of people will be excited when they hear the sonic boom.
And these are going to provide quite a show because you're going to hear those sonic booms.
Booster landing leg deployed.
That sonic boom is great for us.
That thunderclap broke the sound barrier.
Side booster separation confirmed.
Just heard the 2 sonic booms here in the room.
Booster landing confirmed.